Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where I give you my unfiltered and unrehearsed thoughts on marketing data and philosophy. This is a first Sunday of a new year, and I won't say which year, and then I can reuse this content. And a new year brings with it gyms full, the streets paved with runners who have never run before, dating apps filled with people who have decided that this will be the year that they find love. Suddenly, everybody's eating vegetables and eating very healthy again. And it gets to about February, and most of us will have abandoned our goals for the new year. I am somebody who is quite well known, I think, for doing the things he says he's going to do and seemingly doing a lot of things. And people often ask me, well, how do you do all this stuff, Oliver? How do you find the time to do a blog and produce albums and work a full-time job and donate my time to charity? Well, the answer is a few things. The first is that I don't have goals that are set to one particular year. I don't have goals that are set to a particular amount of time per week. So I don't, for example, say, I'm going to exercise for an hour every day, because maybe there'll be some days that I don't have an hour, suddenly I'll abandon my goal and then I'm back to square one. I instead say, I'm going to try and exercise as much as possible, for example. If I'm producing music, for example, I will spread that out over a long period of time. It might actually take years to produce one track, and I'm just trying to find a little bit of time to work on some music. And then even if I only get one tiny little bit of a song done, I say, oh, that's good progress towards a greater goal. And then later, when I'm releasing music on a regular basis, it seems as if, wow, I must have put all this time aside, when really what you're seeing is years in advance that I've had time to work on that music. So a lot of it is a nicely curated illusion that I create for everybody. And similar with this blog, for example, I know that there will be time this year that I am away on holiday. I won't have the time to do it. And so I will record a few of them ahead of time so that I can just put them out whenever I need to. Behind the scenes look there. But as it is a new year, I thought it would be really interesting to talk a little bit about finances and how those might tie into the future. And I want to start off by saying that this is not financial advice or investment advice, because I don't want to go to jail. But there are 3 studies I thought were really, really interesting about finances and about the future and how we think about the future. And it ties into the way that I think about my own goals. So the first was a study by Stanford University. They were interested in the future and how we think about the future and how we plan for the future and save for the future. Because I think all of us know that, hey, if you start saving younger, you'll have more when you're older. If you start thinking about investments when you're younger, you'll have more money when you're older. You need to get financially smart sooner, and it benefits you as you get older. We all know that, and yet it doesn't happen because suddenly there's bills to pay, there's exciting things that we want to spend our money on, and so we don't put as much aside and we suffer in the future. And so they did a study of people who were just about to join college, and they asked them about their future, and they presented them all with a picture of themselves. And some of the people had a picture of how they look today, and some of them had an aged up picture of how they might look in the future. This is really easy to do these days, so that you could do this exercise at home with your family or with your class if you're a teacher or something like that, because of Instagram. But at the time, it was quite novel, it was quite interesting, and it was quite new, unique. And of course, what they found was the people who saw pictures of themselves looking older gave better and more detailed answers, and they thought more about their financial future, simply because they had that vision of themselves. So it prompted, oh, when I'm an old man, how am I going to live? I won't have a job. How do I get there? Because I think it's very difficult, this concept of the future. It's very blurry. It's full of little steps that get you to an ultimate goal that are not always so obvious. Who amongst us who would think that we'd have 2 years of a pandemic, or, who amongst us could plan for the financial future that we happen to see, that we'd leave the EU if you're in the UK? All these things we can't plan for, but they affect our futures in a variety of different ways, and they're difficult to plan for. And so the future is often this obscure, fuzzy thing. And when thinking about how I plan for the future, I often think about the opposite. So I actually have this concept of past Oliver. And right now, you might think I'm present Oliver, but I'm not present Oliver. Right now, I am past Oliver. And past Oliver doesn't do things for himself. He straightens his hair in videos, which must be very distracting, but he doesn't do things for himself. He's always thinking about future Oliver. He's always thinking about how can he make future Oliver's life easier and quicker? How can he benefit future Oliver So a lot of the activities that I do today, very rarely am I doing things that need to be done today. Of course, there are stuff that need to be done today on a day-to-day basis. I need to respond to that client. I need to do this particular piece of work. But moreover, I try and spend most of my time going, okay, I've got maybe a template of writing for a particular scenario. How can I enhance that? How can I save my time in the future so that I'm working quicker and smarter and not relying on, my time? How can I create templates that are going to save my time in the future? If I'm thinking about exercise or eating well, how can I make sure that, okay, I'm having a balanced diet, I'm getting exercise in there so that future Oliver can feel better and be less ill less days. And certainly last year, I actually made a conscious decision that I was going to do less exercise. I know that sounds crazy to most people, but I do a lot of walking naturally. But I decided, hey, I'm not going to do as much exercise next year. I've got other things I want to prioritize. And I was actually iller last year, only a few days more so, but it was noticeable to me that when I was exercising, I didn't have a single day off ill. I didn't need as much time to recover from illness. So this year I'm going to be exercising again, probably once I get past this weekend. So the concept that I find helpful is not to think about future Oliver so much, because that's quite difficult, and to have long goals, but to think of myself as past Oliver. Okay, past Oliver just does an extra hour of work and he gets this done, then he's saving future Oliver's time, work. It's funny, on New Year's Eve, my boss let me leave early, let us all say, hey, if you've got time, you can leave early, go and enjoy the new year. I said, oh, there's no point, because all I'm doing is robbing time from future Oliver. He's still going to have to do this work. I might as well do it now, and it saves him some time. So maybe if you think of yourself as past you, that might be helpful to getting towards some future goals. Another study that I wanted to talk about is a really interesting one when we're thinking about financial future. And it was a 50-year study in New Zealand in a place called Dunedin, which sounds like the space version of LinkedIn, maybe, I don't know. But it was looking at academic performance, professional connections, work ethic in children, and it monitored these people over 50 years' time. So really, a litany of data was collected on this, and so many studies and reports have been made from this data. It's really, really cool. But the number one thing that they found, the best predictor for future financial and professional success later in life was, and if you watch this blog, I'm going to say this thing because I'm always talking about it, emotional intelligence and the ability to control one's actions. Now, that doesn't surprise me at all. I often think about this. I think when you think about people in low-income jobs, in prisons, in the lowest, most vulnerable parts of our society, it is generally true. And bear in mind, I'm a person who has been to more prisons than most people because I had work in prisons. I dealt with long-term unemployed people at the start of my career. I really got to know these people over a long period of time. I give my time to two different charities. One is a homeless charity and one is associated with prostitution. So I really know that the vulnerable people in society, I know these people pretty well. So I can say from first-hand understanding, as well as some research, that controlling one's actions is one of the things that these people generally struggle with. I think not last year, but the year before, my advice to a lot of people, and I think this is always good advice, is that sometimes your job in life is to do nothing. If you are coming from a situation where you've broken up with somebody, for example, your job is to do nothing. And that sounds easy, but it's actually really hard, because most people are going to have some reaction to this thing that's happened that's upset them. Their boyfriend dumped them, and so naturally maybe they are going to go and sleep with a load of guys, or start eating really unhealthy, or they're going to go and do something out of character, like start gambling or something along these lines. They start drinking, they do all these bad habits because they've been hurt, because they're struggling to process that emotion in a healthy way. And so it can be, the most healthy thing you can often do is to say to yourself that your job in this moment, when you're emotionally vulnerable, is to do nothing and to not do a stupid thing. And if you don't do that stupid thing, or if you do the least stupid thing that you can do, that's actually going to benefit you a lot in the long term. These scientists found that emotional quotient, EQ, individuals with high EQ tended to focus on the positive, listen more before making decisions, admit their mistakes, show empathy, and handle negative emotions appropriately. The analysis revealed that the average level of self-control were much higher among girls than boys, and among children from wealthy families, which is really interesting. Maybe those parents spend more time teaching their kids about how to control their emotions and less worried about them needing practical skills because they're rich. Maybe that's why. Children with greater emotional intelligence also had significantly higher IQs on average, which means, as I said, the people who are the most vulnerable to making rash decisions, poorly informed decisions, are the people who are the most vulnerable, generally speaking, in total. So those are two studies that I think are really interesting when we're thinking about our future and how can we shape our own futures. But the third thing I wanted to talk about was a study that is the self-fulfilling prophecy. That's difficult to say. The self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's a study in which school children would do a test on their intelligence. And then the teachers, just at random, they chose like 4 or 5 kids and they said, oh my God, these 4 children, they've done really well on their test. They're gifted. And what they found in every single study that they did is that those children were then given more time, attention, and they were treated differently. Like when they were getting answers right, they're like, oh my God, yes, they were encouraged more. And then they tested the kids again at the end. And of course, you can imagine that this prophecy came true. Those children did a lot better on the results because the teachers had it in their head. They gave them more attention. And I think that you should create your own self-fulfilling prophecy this year. Because why did those children do well? Because they had more access to well-informed people. They had more access and time and encouragement from children. We are on LinkedIn. This only goes out on LinkedIn, unless you're watching on YouTube, I guess. But this goes out on LinkedIn. We're surrounded by professionals, and a lot of people are willing to give their time and attention if you ask them nicely. We can get thoughts and advice, and people are generally, in my opinion, quite generous with their time, as long as you understand and respect that they are giving you something. It's not just free time. If you take somebody out to dinner and pick their brains, I think most people on here will give you time. And if you can access the right advice from people who've been there and are generous and willing to give that back to you, then you can benefit yourself. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can set the right goals and you can meet those goals. And if you are intelligent about the way that you are thinking about decisions, if you are spending more time listening than talking, and more time thinking about how your emotions play into those decisions, then you will have a smarter outcome in terms of business success, financial success, and ultimately career success. So those are my thoughts on how can you not only achieve your goals, but think differently about your goals in the new year. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. That'd be great. And I've been Oliver Gwynne. Tune in next time.